On the slopes of Mount Hermon, the guns have not fallen silent. Damascus accuses Israel of crossing the line, a raid of soldiers and tanks deep inside Syrian soil. In Arab capitals, outrage grows, and in Sweida, the Druze demand a homeland of their own. A dangerous fault line in the Middle East is widening. Syria announced on August 25th that Israel deployed 60 soldiers in an operation to seize territory near Mount Hermon inside the Syrian border, calling it a violation of its sovereignty and a new threat to regional security. According to a report by Reuters, Damascus condemned the move as a dangerous escalation and a direct threat to regional stability. Syria's foreign ministry said the raid took place near Beit Jin, a town close to the borders with Lebanon and the Golan Heights. The ministry claimed Israeli forces seized a strategic hilltop in the foothills of Mount Hermon, describing the action as a blatant violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Israeli military, however, offered a different version of events. A spokesperson confirmed troops had been active in southern Syria, but denied any operation in Beit Jin. They insisted the deployment was a routine operational activity and said only one individual had been detained for questioning after approaching Israeli positions in what the army considered a suspicious manner. The disputed incident unfolded against the backdrop of US-mediated talks between Syria and Israel aimed at de-escalating hostilities. Syrian officials have voiced hope these discussions could pave the way for a broader political settlement, including an Israeli withdrawal to the 1974 disengagement lines that once served as the de facto frontier.
This dangerous escalation is considered a direct threat to regional peace and security.
On the same day of the Israeli incursion, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa met US Special Envoy Thomas Barak in Damascus. Barak had just concluded talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, signaling the high-level diplomatic maneuvering now underway. The clashes in Sweida last month underscored the volatility of the region. Hundreds were reported killed in fighting, involving Druze militias, Sunni Bedouin tribes, and Syrian government forces. Israel conducted airstrikes at the time, saying it acted to prevent mass killings of Druze. Since January, Israel has maintained troops on Mount Hermon summit, declaring the position non-negotiable. The military has since created what amounts to a security zone, complete with checkpoints, patrols, and raids across southern Syria. Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz has made clear his country's forces will not be withdrawing from Mount Hermon or nearby territory, despite international criticism and ongoing US-mediated negotiations. Writing on X, Katz said Israeli forces would remain stationed on the summit of Mount Hermon and in the security zone that is vital to defending communities in the Golan and Galilee. He framed the presence as a lesson drawn from the Hamas-led assault on October 7, 2023.
The IDF will remain at the peak of Mount Hermon and in the security zone necessary to protect the Golan and Galilee settlements from threats looming from the Syrian side. As the main lesson from the events of October 7th, we will continue to protect the Druze in Syria as well.
Damascus, by contrast, accused Israel of expanding its hold inside Syrian territory, citing the seizure of Talbat al-Wada, a strategic position overlooking Beit Jin. The strategic importance of Mount Hermon is undeniable. From its peak, the Israeli military can monitor swathes of Syria and Lebanon, a surveillance advantage it has reinforced by building fortifications since last year. US envoy Thomas Barak told Axios on August 25th that while Israel and Syria were negotiating in good faith, significant gaps remained. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, meanwhile, has voiced skepticism about the prospects for peace, telling Arab journalists on Sunday that conditions were not conducive to finalizing any agreement. The collapse of Assad's regime last year has left a fragmented Syrian landscape in which Israel has repeatedly acted militarily, targeting infrastructure and asserting control over key areas. Strikes on Damascus in recent months, including one on the Defense Ministry, have only deepened the mistrust. The reported Israeli incursions into southern Syria have drawn sharp condemnation across the Arab world. On Tuesday, Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry denounced the operations in the strongest terms.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of the continuation of Israeli violations, its incursion into Syrian territories, and its interference in its internal affairs.
The statement warned that Israel's actions violated international law and breached the 1974 disengagement agreement, raising the spectre of broader instability as fighting continues in Sweida. Qatar echoed the criticism, with its foreign ministry branding the incursions a flagrant breach of Syrian sovereignty and international norms.
The state of Qatar strongly condemns the incursion of Israeli occupation forces into the territories of the sisterly Syrian Arab Republic, considering it a blatant violation of Syria's sovereignty, a flagrant breach of international law, and a challenge to the international will supporting Syria's reconstruction, development, and the establishment of peace in the region.
Doha further urged the international community to take decisive measures to rein in Israeli operations, warning that repeated aggressions risk fueling a wider crisis. Such coordinated Arab responses signal growing unease about the escalating confrontation between Israel and Syria, especially as Washington seeks to broker a security arrangement. Against this volatile backdrop, the Druze community in southern Syria is charting its own path. Hikmat al-Hijri, a leading Druze religious figure, on Monday called for international backing to establish a separate Druze-administered region in Sweida.
Our path begins under a new banner, after the recent ordeal that aimed to exterminate the Druze community in Syria. We are advocates of peace, not advocates of evil. But we have the right to defend ourselves. What happened recently was a barbaric and brutal attack on us.
The remarks came during a meeting with the Men of Dignity movement, one of Sweida's principal armed factions. Al-Hijri said the violence of July, which left around 1,600 people dead, most of them Druze civilians, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, had convinced the community to seek greater self-rule. He announced plans to form a Druze National Guard, a coalition of local militias that would coordinate under his leadership. The force, he said, would safeguard Sweida with the help of international guarantees. Dozens of smaller factions have already pledged allegiance to this new structure, underscoring the Druze determination to carve out a measure of autonomy in a war-torn landscape increasingly defined by shifting front lines and contested sovereignties.